The wood is wet, which makes them dangerously slippery. The axes are sharp and the saws are hungry. We got a lot of great competitors and a lot of fantastic action right here on Lumberjacks, which begs the question,
where else would you want to be on a sunny day like this in Port McNeill?
Lumberjacks is sponsored by Echo, professional quality, ask any pro. Crown, protect, maintain, save. Bodog, be a player. Red Pine Wilderness Lodge, simply unreal fishing.
We're up here in Port McNeill as part of Orca Fest, a great celebration they have every year here in North Vancouver Island. I'm with my co-host Rod Cumberland, Lumberjack sport analyst. Rod, we had a chance to fly from Vancouver yesterday on Pacific Coastal Airlines. What a terrific flight that was. And getting to the Lumberjack competition, we have a small field of competitors here, but we got some serious talent.
Actually, yes, two guys transplanted from the East Coast. Dave McLeod and Nick Russell are here. But as we know, the best axemen in the world are from Australia. There's a couple of Australians here.
Well, ex-Australian, now Canadian. Mitch Hewitt is here. Brad DeLosa still an Australian. Those guys are clearly the class of the Springboard Chop field. But if they make a mistake, who's going to take advantage?
Springboard Chop, very, very challenging event. Anything can go wrong there, and if they do, Dave or Nick could jump up into that hole.
Well, we're also covering the women's single buck. We have some really interesting matchups there as well.
Actually, two college grads from the East Coast as well, UNB and Sir Sanford grads. They'll be interesting to watch in the single buck. But the class act will be the two local girls, Sarah and Anita, and they'll be battling it out in a single buck.
Well, we got a big field of competitors here, but a real diverse field. We got some that are relatively new in the game, some seasoned veterans, crowds all settling to get in here for a great competition. Weather's a little bit damp. It's going to be a great show. We're getting started with the Springboard Chop. First seats will be Terry Basso and Ben James. Now, Ben has been out of the game for a little bit of time.
That's right, but you'll see here in a second, Ben's from New Zealand, and New Zealand's Australians, they're the best axemen in the world, so you'd expect Ben to be really among the top choppers here today.
Well, now, he's put down his axe, picked up a microphone. He does traveling lumberjack shows around BC with his wife. His wife is the announcer up at Grouse Mountain, taking on Terry Basso. Now, what does inexperience or lack of practice do for you?
You just don't have the confidence when you're swinging that. In a springboard chop, you want to have really swinging that axe nice and hard to make your pocket so that you go deep. Usually you want a 4 and 4 when you're doing it, 4 in your first swing, 4 in your second hole. These guys here really struggling with that, as you can see.
Now, Terry Basso's up on his first board. Ben's on his second board there, and he's hitting in his wood. The wood is looking awfully firm.
This is West Coast white pine, and it's you see that mold on the outside of it.
Ben's getting down off his second board. Sorry to cut you out there, but he's getting down off his second board. I guess he wasn't comfortable, didn't have the confidence.
That's right. When you haven't done it for a while, of course, you're worried. You get up there and you feel that board sag a little bit. You're not sure if it's going to stay. And when you're up to 8-9 feet off the ground, you want to make sure that board's good and solid.
Now, Perry, we mentioned the wood, the West Coast white pine. It's firm. What's the coloration on it there?
Yeah, usually when you get 70% moisture content in 70-degree weather, you get that mold starting in the pine. You can see these blocks have been around for a little bit because they've got that mold start on the outside of them. So it's chopped. Looks a little firm here. You see Terry struggling with that.
Well, he's got to keep his lines. He's not accurate as well. Terry Basso's been in the game for a long time. We're over 2 minutes here. This is a long time to be swinging a 6-pound headed axe.
That's right. Who knows what's going on in his world, you know, whether he's been able to practice much at all this summer, but his lines, he's struggling a lot with his lines. You can see on this backside here, switch around, and you're going to see that he's a lot of steps here, lots of wasted strokes, but he's finishing it off.
Terry Basso clocks the first heat in at 2:48. Sets the time to beat. Terry, you got up there a pretty good climb there, and I saw you stepping your way in on the front side there. Did you wood yourself at all, or were you just narrowing your cut as you went your way through?
Well, this is bigger wood than I'm used to. I'm used to cutting 10-inch up top, not 12. And so I underestimated how wide of an opening I should have. It was a little bit narrower than I should have, so I had to step in a little bit.
What kind of grind?
It's just a chisel grind. Again, like I said, it's got some file marks in it, so it's got a little bit of a serrated. Not the edge is not serrated, but the back here in the chisel itself, it's a little rough, and it tends to pull the axe into the pine a little more.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with my buddy Dave more. And white pine, usually a freshly ground or freshly stoned axe, chops it just a whole lot better.
Well, here is Dave McLeod taking on Nick Russell. Nick Russell put a lot of effort and time and energy into putting on this show. taking on Dave in the second heat of Springboard Chop. Right now the time to beat is 2:49, set by Terry Basso in the last heat.
Yeah, it's funny. Nick's dad, Guy Russell, back in the East Coast, he used to organize a show down in Riverside, Alberta, and here's Nick running one out on the West Coast years later.
Well, looks like a good notch by Dave McLeod. Nick Russell right behind him at this point. Both guys with 5 or 6 hit notches, and Dave's got his bent over, his knees bent. Is he chopping a little bit lower than he should be?
Yeah, it's hard to say how tall these poles are, but usually a set of a springboard pole, it's about 8.5 feet to the bottom of his block right there. If these are a little bit shorter poles, he may want to get a little bit tighter on his wood.
Well, we're into this firm white pine up top there. You see Dave McLeod, he uses spikes on his board. That can be help as well. But look at the knot of Nick Russell's block. It's got to be tough.
White pine, as it grows, of course, it self-prunes, branches fall off the outside, and the wood grows around that, so you can't see them from the outside of the block. And as you get in there, it's a little bit of a surprise. Look at that right there, that knot sticking out through the neck. You got to hate seeing that when you're chopping.
I mean, you got to be persistent. You got to keep your lines. Dave is nice and tight and neat there with his lines. He looks like he went through a bit of a knot as well, and both guys got to stick with it as we get to the 1:50.
That's right, really firm wood. This stuff should actually saw really good today, Bill, but it's firm to chop.
Nick has finally punched that knot out there. Dave is over on his backside with his typical cross-handed swing that he's got there, but it is successful. He's going to lower the time to beat. Nick Russell really struggling to get this thing finished.
You can see him breathing hard here. He's struggling a lot with his... Oh, but look at this here. Dave McLeod is going to drop the time to beat.
Drops it down by 29 seconds, down to a time of 2:20 with 1 heat to go in the springboard.
That's right, and the best choppers here are Mitch Hewitt and Brad DeLosa yet to go in the springboard.
I know we talked about axe selection a little bit earlier. I don't think any axe selection would have prepared you for that, right?
No, probably not, Bill. It's Ed said it took me 12 hits to get my first chip out.
It just wasn't moving, right?
No, you can see the big pitch seam here, and once I got past the pitch seam, it was just a big ring of knots in the middle. So.
Yeah, people probably wonder what a pitch pocket or pitch seam is there. It's that dark brown line that you saw in there. It's really where pitch gathers in the wood, makes it really sticky and hard right there at that one particular point. Just as hard to chop through actually as a knot. So when you see that when you're opening up wood, it kind of plays in your mind. Hard block. Well,
here's our feature heat in the springboard. Brad DeLosa taking on Mitch Hewitt, and the rains are starting to come down. Doesn't make anything easier, but these guys are real pros.
That's right. Got to focus on it now. 4 hit pockets for both these guys. Both veterans at this event. They're fun to watch in the springboard chop.
Now, as much as our first 2 heats with guys who were struggling a little bit with the wood, Mitch Hewitt's going to make this easy. I'm a betting man. If I'm a Bulldog betting man, I'm betting on Mitch Hewitt to win this heat. But Brad DeLosa from Australia, he's going to stay with him all the way.
That's right. And again, a lot bigger wood on the top. Usually you see 10, 11-inch wood at the top. 12-inch round white pine at the top of this. That's a big block to slug through.
Well, Brad is well behind Mitch at this point. Look at that, Mitch Hewitt. He's one of the best springboard choppers in the world, making it look effortless as he makes his way through the first side.
Yeah, and actually that's because of the block. It's a really soft block here. Brad and Mitch. Mitch probably picked a really good axe for this wood. It's chopping it really well.
Now Mitch is struggling, Brad is struggling with his second board there. He can't get his power as Mitch is on his backside ready to put things up, and he's going to win this springboard chop for sure as he puts things, finishing things off, driving. And Mitch Hewitt wins that springboard chop with a time of 59.78. Brad DeLosa struggling. Not like you, really. Your second board, I remember you sagging, really struggled in springboard. What happened there?
Yeah, the springboard was a bit of a shocker, really. I just didn't quite get to the back of the hole with the board, and it didn't dig in and sit where I wanted it to, so it sagged down and made life very hard for me.
Well, even in the pouring rain, a couple of world-class athletes best in the field by over a minute. Mitch Hewitt comes in with a time of 59.78 and a 12-inch springboard.